And in other news developing now, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl is expected to remain at the U.S. Military Medical Center in Landstuhl, Germany, longer than expected, at least into next week, we're being told. Meantime, Bergdahl's hometown of Haley, Idaho, has now canceled a homecoming celebration planned for later this month. Officials there say they've been inundated with complaints and don't have enough resources to handle any problems that could arise. Let me bring in former Chief Prosecutor at Guantanamo Bay, retired Air Force Colonel Morris Davis. He served as chief prosecutor from 2005 to 2007. Also, Michael Crowley, the chief foreign affairs correspondent for Time magazine, which made a late switch on its cover, its new edition from Hillary Clinton, to Bo Bergdahl, asking the question, was he worth it? And joining us, the Grio.com's columnist and MSNBC contributor, Goldie Taylor. Thank you all for joining us. Colonel, let me start with you here. You caught a lot of attention on Hardball when you made the point the number of detainees that have already been released from Guantanamo Bay and the lingering real issue of what will happen to those remaining prisoners once this war, the combat role, is complete. These individuals, perhaps maybe not these 5, but eventually you have to clear that prison.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the justification we've used for the last decade is that we're at war, and during time of war you can detain the enemy for the duration of the conflict. And the president's made it clear this conflict is coming to an end by December, which leaves that conundrum of what do you do with the people we've been holding all this time. So to me, the opportunity to trade 5 of them for a U.S. service member was a pretty good deal, particularly 5 guys that in 12 years we could never charge. I mean, we managed to come up with enough evidence to try and convict Osama bin Laden's driver. So to say that these guys are the hardest of the hardcore is some real hyperbole.
Well, and I'm asking you specifically about that because you have reports that these individuals were planners within the military. Despite their age now, they were instrumental in the beginning.
Well, if they were instrumental, if there was evidence to show that, I am confident we would have charged them, we would have prosecuted them, they would still be at Guantanamo. I mean, we had 12 years to develop a case on these individuals, and there's a lot of rumor and innuendo, and right. I'm certainly not arguing that they're choir boys or guaranteeing they won't do anything bad in the future. But we had a dozen years to build a case, and we couldn't. Like I said, we could convict Osama bin Laden's driver, but not these individuals. And at some point, you know, the war's coming to an end. I think it was a good trade to get 5 of these guys for out for a U.S. service member home. And by the number, 779 held at Guantanamo Bay over time. Today, 149. Michael, let's talk to you about the change in the Time cover, moving Hillary Clinton off the front page for Bo Bergdahl for obvious reasons, but she is intertwined in this story. As you well know, the Daily Beast and others reporting that she was skeptical as Secretary of State about a deal with the Taliban to bring Bergdahl back home.
She was skeptical of the deal, but she also was interested in some kind of a larger negotiation with the Taliban that could have led to a political solution in Afghanistan. You'll remember that she brought in Richard Holbrooke, who conducted very intense diplomatic efforts, a lot of it having to do with the government of Pakistan, to try to find some way that there could be a reconciliation, because everyone realized that we weren't going to win the Afghanistan war on the battlefield, and we will be leaving now without a clear victory in hand, and it's not really clear what's going to happen. I think there's still hope in Washington that there can be some kind of reconciliation among the different factions, that the government can reach an agreement with the Taliban. So she was not opposed to dealing with the Taliban outright, but did have concerns about this deal, this particular deal. The one last thing I would add is that the context has changed. So now that we are leaving, our forces are leaving, these guys are going to be less of a threat to American soldiers because there will be fewer of them in the country. So at a time when we had tens of thousands of troops in Afghanistan who were out doing patrols and in the middle of combat, they would pose a much bigger threat. By the time they leave Qatar, there will be very few Americans left and pretty much consigned to a small area, a safe area, not in combat.
And Michael, to your point, for the context, they're absolutely right. And she was also concerned about the conditions for the release of the prisoners, conditions that some have opposed regarding their treatment and where they're being housed in Qatar and their freedom to move around. But the other issue that's come to our attention, and people have been talking about this, Goldie, for the last few days, the number of Republicans who deleted tweets that were on their accounts saying, in a sense, do whatever it takes to bring back Bo Bergdahl, now calling him a traitor and other choice words. Politico points out that over the years, you had a number of Republicans saying everything possible, put it on the ground. They cite Representative Lee Terry, Mark O'Mady of Nevada, and new Iowa GOP Senate nominee Joni Ernst is just a couple who in the past praised Bergdahl's release and then, as the political tide turned, deleted those tweets. Senator John McCain in February endorsed the idea of a 5-prisoner swap. Depending on the details, now he says what he knows of the terms of the deal present put the United States at a grave risk. This is the political climate of it all, Goldie.
Well, I think the key word here is political climate. We know we're just ahead of the midterm elections. 2016 is right around the corner. And so there are a number of people, political forces with agendas who are both elected and grassroots, who don't want to see this president have a successful moment at all. And so I think that, you know, bringing Bo Bergdahl back home was absolutely the right thing to do, because we leave no man or woman behind. The politics behind it in terms of the actual prisoner swap, who was swapped for, the opening and closure of Gitmo Bay, all of those things sort of play into this grassroots negativity that I'm seeing. I saw people who tweeted as early as a week before Bo Bergdahl was released that he was an American hero, that he was a POW. And it seems today that after he has been released in exchange for these 5, that he's no longer a hero, that he is no longer even a POW in their eyes, that he's a deserter, that he's a traitor. And so all of these things, you know, while they stem from, you know, a very real concern about his conduct that night when he went missing, it also stemmed from a political agenda at play, and that's the most unfortunate part about this.
And Michael, let's go also to this meeting that was held yesterday, and you have senators leaving from both sides saying that the video that they saw did not answer the question whether or not Bo Bergdahl's health required immediate action, and thus this 30-day notice that was required for Congress was not followed through. Again, interesting when you look at the dynamics of who is saying that they're not satisfied, even though he's a Democrat. It's West Virginia, Joe Manchin, for example.
Right. Well, you know, there's partisanship, and that's probably the most powerful force in Washington. But, you know, the branches, the separation of powers, the sense in Congress that they have their prerogatives, that they need to be respected, that the president can't trample them, which is a totally appropriate attitude, is also a very powerful thing, and it will cross partisan lines. You will have, for instance, you saw Dianne Feinstein, who is the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, not happy with the way this deal went down on the notification side. Someone like Senator Manchin is a conservative Democrat who frequently criticizes the White House, and that's probably good for him politically, it should be noted. But someone like Dianne Feinstein has a different set of political calculations, but I think that people like her, and incidentally Jay Rockefeller in West Virginia, not really a what you would call a conservative Democrat, although he comes from a red state, not happy with the way the White House handled this. So that has been, you know, there's several legs to the stool here of the outrage and the anger at the president one. But this anger in Congress, which is there's a partisan element, but there's a kind of separation of powers element to it, is really helping to drive the story.
All right, Colonel Morris Davis, thank you so much. Michael Crowley and Goldie Taylor, of course, thank you for joining us as well. Thank you. And developing now this morning, investigators are on the scene